What is the single greatest market indicator that you can use to understand whether or not the reason that your Facebook ads are dying right now, and so your email and your TikTok and your Google and your conversion rate and everything, why in the entire world it seems not working for you right now? What is the single greatest market indicator that you can look at that's absolutely free that lets you know if the problem is you, the problem is something you can control for, or if the problem is something you need to plan to mitigate against? Let's dive into it, because I think that too many people completely avoid the most valuable bit of insight from some of the world's greatest thinkers on a model that's been proven for hundreds of years. Let's dive into it right here, right now. The single greatest market indicator that you probably aren't paying nearly enough attention to. All right. First, one, thank you so much for being here and for watching these videos and for giving a damn about this stuff. I really appreciate it. And I hope that you know that I know you could be anywhere in the world right now watching anything you want to, or you don't even have to have an electronic device on. But instead, you chose to be here. And I really appreciate it. I hope that you've subscribed. Go ahead and do that so you don't miss any of these videos, because they're coming all the time. And if you really enjoy this stuff and you want more from me, please feel free to make sure you're on my next webinars. I do master classes all the time. Get yourself up, register at apply.facebookdisruptor.com so that you don't miss anything else, and that you can absolutely maximize your ability to take advantage of the world's single greatest intent creation device, and honestly turn yourself around from somebody that just spends somebody else's money as a paid button clicker into a real CMO who can fundamentally change an entire landscape of business in front of you. With that being said, let's get to it. So, the single greatest market indicator that almost nobody pays attention to, or I'll put it this way, far too little people find the value in, the stock market. And let me tell you this, it's not just that, well, the stock market is this or that. Let me tell you something. Stocks, crypto, whatever it is absolutely one of the greatest market indicators. Now, for instance, we've been seeing a lot of difficulty at the time I'm recording this towards the end of February, where all month long things were looking kind of tough. And we said, okay, well, around Valentine's Day, we got propped up by a sale, okay. And then we were saying, well, CPMs are really high because of the Super Bowl advertising, which is true. And then we just continue to see other things going. And what happens when we see this is a whole bunch of people who are Facebook centric say that Facebook is broken, and when it isn't. Actually, it's still unmatched anywhere. There's no scalable pivot from Facebook. There probably won't be for years, and that's a whole other conversation. But what else has been going on? The stock market has been dropping. If you have money in your Robinhood, for instance, it's been red far too many days in a row. Now, it's not, I don't want you to see this and say, well, of course, when the stock market drops and people lose money, they don't want to spend. Because you know what? That is absolutely true. But that's not really what we're getting to. But yes, look, if you wake up in the morning and you lost your $300 or 10 grand in the stock market, you're probably less likely to go out and spend money on a purchase the next day. Absolutely true. But there are other things at play here. The stock market is built on speculation, is manipulated effectively by people whose day job, some of the greatest minds in the world, at trying to speculate and predict consumer behavior and a market indicator of their willingness to put money from their bank account to someplace else. Now, we see this all the time. When an airplane goes down, that airline stock drops, right? And then it comes back up. It's actually one of the easiest ways to hack the stock market, just anytime there's a big drop, or a cruise ship, right? You see a big drop and then it comes right back, right? Or when Tesla misses some, projection, what happens? The stock drops and then it comes back up, because there is an amount of speculation on the future value of that business, as well as a unit economic indicator of the willingness for the average person to give that company their money in a way that they wouldn't have necessarily the day before. Now, what's really important here is we tend to think of these things as, well, this stock or that stock, or the market this or the market that. But you have to understand all of this is a cumulative effect, right? Now, since 2014 to 2019, 2020, we had one of the greatest growths in commerce in America in the history of the country, right? We had, in the United States and worldwide, a booming economy, right? There was, for whatever your political beliefs, there was a person in charge that was very much focused on and delivering a booming economy, right? Every year got bigger and bigger. We saw an unprecedented bull market. Now, what also happened? The technology of the internet got better. Facebook ads came out, and just about anybody could throw money at just about anything and make a whole bunch of money, right? And so we've seen these things go head to head. Now, what happened when somebody else took charge and that direction was halted and then reversed? We saw difficulties in the market. Now, you can obviously point to other outside indicators that are absolutely valid, like COVID, 100%. But COVID was actually really good for e-commerce. Let's not get it twisted. It was amazing for e-commerce because people weren't going outside. People weren't going to stores. And if you built a store that solved the problem, you could make a ton of money. Actually, some of the world's most wealthy individuals did phenomenally during COVID. And I know for a fact that a lot of the students of my Facebook Ads MBA program took that time to completely redefine their life. What else happened? Well, 2021, we also saw a big drawback. We saw a drawback towards the beginning of it, right? And we did see a lift towards the end of the year. Maybe it has to do something with the leadership change. Maybe it has to do something with, the economy. Maybe it has to do something with COVID. But also iOS 14 came out. So apparently it was end of days, but it wasn't. Because iOS 14 had very little to do with how Facebook as an ads platform functions when used properly. And ultimately, iOS 14 didn't have much of an impact on the stock market. And what happened? Facebook ad spend went up, and revenue from clicks delivered by Facebook ads went up. Very considerably. And the real point here that I want to get to is we tend to view these things as Facebook-centric data points, when really they're not. Facebook works. Scaling your Facebook account happens because you have a good business. Good businesses scale Facebook accounts. It's not the other way around. Also, and probably more importantly, when Facebook accounts fail, they're not the only source of traffic that suffered. Over the last week or so, we've been seeing a lot of people say, well, Facebook is broken. The same people also said, well, TikTok CPMs have doubled and my site conversion rate is down and my email, people don't want to spend money. And that's okay. That's 100% okay. Because people should have that right to spend the money or not. There are real people at the end of those dollars. My point to all of that is a great way to understand whether the average person is more or less likely to spend money is to take a look globally and understand what's happening in the stock market. Because that stock market is ultimately an indicator of consumer intent, buyer confidence. There's a lot of buzzwords for this, but I'm going to tell you two things that are highly, I don't know if they're correlated, but they sure as hell move in the same direction at the same time, in the same shape, almost all the time. When you have a booming economy, people buy things. Small businesses are started. And the ability for the entrepreneur to put money in their pocket becomes far, far easier, right? And to that point, we saw it in the 90s, right? We saw it in the 20s of 100 years ago. And we saw it from 2014 to 2019, 2020. Now, there's a lot of other things that those times have in common, which we're not going to get into at this point, but ultimately, booming economies create great opportunities for entrepreneurs to invest in themselves and create business. Now, whether we have a recession or just a bad month or two, these things tend to have an effect on consumer confidence and user behavior. Because user behavior is not a constant. One of the biggest lies that people tell you is, well, CPMs really matter because if I have this click-through rate and I have this conversion rate and I'm just not reaching enough people, yeah, sure. If those things are constant, that's totally true. But that's never a constant. No two people behave the same, and very, very rarely do people behave the same way this week as they did last month. Now, we can flatten some of that up and down by looking at longer trends, of course, which is why we look at trend analysis inside the MBA program. You know, we talk about looking at week over week, month over month inside the Scrum Doc. That's the entire thing. You know, in the latest webinar I did, we talked a lot about ecosystem ROAS, where we're trying to understand the net impact of every business, but of every facet of your business. But what I'm really trying to get to here is, I have yet to see this year, for instance, the business that has had Facebook crumble and absolutely crush everywhere else. The point here is, maybe the reason that you're having trouble isn't that you're doing anything wrong. It's that people don't want to buy. And maybe your responsibility as a business owner is to make sure that you have accounted for that eventuality in your business model. I hope that helps. Anyway, YouTube thinks you might like these things. Go ahead and subscribe. You know, a lot of times you get into actionable stuff, but this just felt like way too pertinent and top of mind to not cover today. So I really appreciate it. You know, a lot of times I will literally go to the internet and say like, hey, too many people are talking about this thing. Not enough people are talking about this thing. Should I do a video? And they all come up because you guys say so. So once again, click on these videos if you like to. Go ahead and subscribe if you want to. I'm going to try to keep my head out of the way. I think I got to do this. Anyway, I'll see you on the internet. Bye.